This is a Film Stories original podcast. We made this.
Welcome back to the X-Cast. I'm Sarah Blair, and we're here for the X-Files Reopened. I've got Kurt and Carl with me, and we're here to talk about our favorite episodes. And Carl, we are going to intro your episode, the one that you chose that is the most important, the most special, the dearest to your heart.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I've chosen the podcast that I would like people to hear again if they haven't already, is basically the idea. It doesn't necessarily reflect my feelings about the episode itself, although we can talk about that. But yeah, do you want me to just tell you what it is?
Yeah, don't keep us in suspense.
I have chosen for us to re-air the episode on Triangle that Kurt and Paige did, obviously back at the start of season 6. So what I was thinking was, you know, it'd be nice for somebody to pick an episode Kurt hosted, first of all. So let's find one that was good. I looked down the list. I couldn't find any that were good. Sorry. No, I'm joking. No, I remember really liking this episode when I heard it. And I think Kurt and Paige did a really good job. And I think basically what makes it so memorable is, Kurt, you had a nice fan theory, didn't you, that people will hear about what exactly is going on in Triangle. And as I recall, it was really interesting to listen to. It generated some nice feedback as well in the basement and things like that. So yeah, I'm just thinking with a bit of distance on it now, it'd be a nice one to go back and hear again. That's what I'm basically thinking.
Yeah, I like that episode. I think the very nature of, hadn't realised in all the years of watching Triangle that people hadn't taken Triangle the way I took it at the end. And it was only necessarily the end. So it wasn't anything that I really kind of thought about as such. And going back into it and actually physically thinking about what I thought at the end and transplanting that into the episode was great fun. And I came out of it with a stronger belief. So, but yeah, it was great fun. It was great fun doing those episodes. It's fantastic.
No, it was, because I think around the same time I did a really nice episode with Marlene about Hitchcock connections to the X-Files, where we talked about Triangle. And I remember thinking that your episode sort of led into that one quite nicely. And I think, like you say, it's just the beauty of the X-Files, isn't it, that lots of people have lots of different perspectives. So it was really fun to hear you and Paige, who took this episode in a certain way that kind of differs to what a lot of people think, and make a really strong case for it. So yeah, Sarah, that's why I've picked this one to be this week's reopened file.
Excellent. Looking forward to re-listening to it. It's a great episode. Really enjoyed it the first time around, and I can't wait to listen to it again.
All right, should we hear it? Let's hear it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. My name is Kurt North, and welcome along to our continuing coverage of Season 6 of the X-Files. And this week, we are going to talk about a particularly interesting and experimental episode in the title of Triangle. And joining me this week is Paige Schector. Paige, how's things going?
Hey, it's great. Hi, Kurt. Great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you as well. We've been on the other side. We've been talking. The time is now a millennium,
right,
in recent history. But it's time. It's X-Cast time. It's X-Files time. So an episode I'm particularly looking forward to. But before we get into that, season 6. What are your general thoughts on season 6? Obviously, a lot of people call it X-Files Light.
X-Files Light, yeah.
But what do you make of the 6th season?
It is lighter in both look and feel. I think, you know, with they're in California and everything's brighter and not so dark, and that's sort of followed over with the storylines as well. They're lighter and not so dark, and even when they're heavy, they sort of seem lighter, and there's a lot of stories that remind you of other things, like the one before Triangle is Drive, and that seemed very Speed-like, and then we have Triangle here, which has, you know, hitting you over the head with Thor's hammer with its influences, and But that's kind of how the beginning of season 6 sort of got off, with all these light episodes. And I think it turns some people off, but I find it pretty enjoyable. I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this on a recording earlier in the season, but I think it's I really, really, really do like season 6. I think it's different and it's different, and yes, it is lighter, and I'll be surprising some people, some of my reactions, I think, during the course of season 6. But things like the Rain King, I really like that episode. And it's a kind of shippery episode, but I actually, really like it. So I might be softening in my later X-Files years. I don't know.
I think there are episodes that I like that people don't take to as much. Like, I'm big on Aguamala. I think Aguamala is great fun.
Yeah, I don't mind Aguamala, actually. I wouldn't say it's one I would put on instantly, but it's an episode I actually enjoy when I watch it, so that's all good. But this week we're talking about season 6, episode 3, which is Triangle. And as I said before, it's an interesting one. It was written and directed by Chris Carter. It was aired on the 22nd of November 1998. And its IMDb score is interesting itself. It's 8.8 from 3,476. So high praise indeed. High praise indeed. What would you what are your general thoughts on Triangle then? What would you rate it out of 10? And how do you think it fits within the series as a whole?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think I'm going to downplay the IMDb ranking there, because both Dreamlands are rated higher than this, which I find almost...
No, that's not right.
almost unfathomable. But I give this very, very high marks. It's my go-to rewatch episode. It's my sister's go-to rewatch episode. We love it. As a fan, it's a 10 for me. It's a rollicking ride. But being more objective, I'd say it's a 9. It's got a couple cosmetic flaws, but I don't have anything bad to say about it. At least I don't think I do, and we'll find out over the course of this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably famous for this now. I would never give anything out of 10. I mean, I think when we did Jose Chung's, it was 9.75. And obviously, when we went over the road to the time is now, and we talked about Doomsday Defense, that was a similar kind of thing. But it would definitely be in my top 5 episodes of the X-Files, if not probably top 3 or 4. And I would rate it. I would go for a 9 for definite. I think it's really good. You're right with it. Might necessarily be from a critical point of view a 9 or a 10. Because the story is quite light, but then the part of the point is it's a bit dreamlike, and it's a bit like the dreamscapey and dream logic and whatever. So which I quite like, and that probably draws me in because I'm a massive David Lynch fan for a start off. So that obviously draws me in. But yeah, so it's an interesting episode. I'm looking really forward to actually diving into this, because there's a lot to garnish from it. Even though it's story-ish light, the actual, obviously, the techniques, the aspects of it, some of the opinions on the episode as well. I found some opinions on this episode quite interesting as well. The way that people have taken Triangle away, and how they've kind of parsed it in their own heads. So that's going to be interesting itself. But I think, first of all, before we talk about the episode, I wouldn't mind getting into the direction of stuff that Chris Carter did. This was obviously an episode that was based around. It was, I think, from what I believe, it was around the Red and the Black. If my memory serves me right, that Chris Carter was given a trophy at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you know that story?
I do.
Yeah. So he's he was done because of all the film he used, and this kind of incepted into his head, and eventually he was like, well, if I'm using too much film, then I'll do a version of Rope, which should in theory take less film, because you're doing it all in one take. So the fact it was developed, and I think the Twilight Zone episode was also mentioned, but the filming style here, obviously Rope 1917's just done it recently. Do you actually like that style separate from Triangle itself?
Oh, I love it. It sort of drives the story, because the story is very light, but by just constantly following the action, it keeps us, the adrenaline keeps flowing. And I'm my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie is Rope. So when I heard they were going to do this, I was excited before the show even started.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that then as well, because do you remember when this was coming out then, and the media kind of circus that was around it? Well, obviously we're on different sides of the pond, but it was heavy over here. That I know some of the tabloid newspapers had it as front page news that the kiss is going to happen. It was in Sunday supplements. What was it like over there?
Oh, they weren't talking about the kiss. They were talking about, the production of it and how they were doing the 10-minute takes and the construction of it. And I think they held that kiss back from us, because I don't remember that part of it, but I do remember like Entertainment Weekly doing a big thing on it. And I remember a lot of media around this episode, but not the kiss.
I'm wondering then, because it was released in America first and we wouldn't have got it for 6 months, that it would have been the fact that obviously the episode has aired, so they can actually make use of that potentially. Mm-hmm. But I do remember it was like, they're about to lock lips and things. I remember that being quite a strong kind of pull to try and get people in. And as I say, it was on the front. I remember it vividly on front of a particular tabloid over here, that they had that actual scene of them when they're just about to kiss just before that. And obviously, if we relate it back to Fight the Future, when it becomes a kind of a recurring trope of Chris Carter to do it, but in alternative ways.
Right.
Because you've got obviously, the CPR kiss and the almost kiss and the bees and all that type of thing. But we won't talk about that too much. Also, as well, this was the first episode that was filmed in 2.35, I think, and it was shown on TV in 1.33. And Chris Carter obviously wanted that kind of film-esque stuff. So I think that having a widescreen format, especially coming off the back of the film, and they're wanting to, they always said it was a movie of the week, but making it widescreen and making a lot of the shows then widescreen, I think helped the show in actually thing. I think that potentially the fact that they did go to Hollywood, that you probably needed to do that next step of going widescreen. Do you think that's that having this widescreen aspect really helps this episode?
It does. It does. It really works for it. And I don't know if I should give you my theory here or not, but okay. When I was working on my rewatch blog for this episode, and I came up with this idea: what if Triangle had been the first feature movie and not Fight the Future? I think it would have brought so many people into the fold. I think so many people would have been intrigued, and there would have been an actual kiss instead of the almost kiss and the CPR kiss, which I guess it's become known as. But I just think this episode has grandeur to it, and it has conspiracy elements to it. What it's missing are the aliens. So I can see why it wasn't the movie, but I think this would have made a really nice first film for the X-Files.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. I mean, as you say, Rope has done it. 1917 obviously is way in its future, but 1917 worked really well from that as well. So it would have been interesting to see an X-File like that as a movie. So it's certainly one for people to think about and react to after this episode airs out. So that'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
The ship as well. I think X-Files have done this quite a lot over the seasons. They've got a train car. How do you fit a train car into the episode? They've got this Queen Mary ship, which they used obviously to play as the Queen Anne in this one. And I think there's been a lot of talk of Chris Carter trying to 1930s it up because it had been remodeled and refurbished and things, which in itself must have been quite a feat. And the fact they had to put scaffolding in for the rain and all that aspect as well. I mean, I think that having a canvas like that ship, again, it goes to that film element, that grandeur, that you're using something that's actually real, and they can make uses of it. And I think that they do a really good job of it.
Definitely. I mean, there's something to be said about filming here because the history enters into it, even if it's not expressly, laid out. This is the Queen Mary, an actual ocean liner that transported British troops in World War II. And then it became like this floating hotel and museum. And then the ghost stories started to, be heard, people considering it haunted, and they're doing paranormal tours on it and everything like that. And that feel enters into what we're seeing, even if it's not expressly being talked about.
Yeah, no, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know it was. I knew it was a hotel. I didn't realize there was paranormal trips to it. I mean, I think that's become quite a thing with like old railway stations and stuff, isn't it? That you get these paranormal tours that people do.
Right.
Are you a believer? Are you a believer in that thing?
Am I? Oh gosh. I'd say I'm a believer in paranormal. I'm not a Mulder. And I will be a Scully up until the point at which the Scully points don't make sense, don't explain it. And then you have to sort of open your mind and go, well, maybe there's something to this.
Absolutely. And one of the final things, just from a technical point of view, and then we'll talk about the episode, is something I didn't realize at the time, and it was something that was brought to my attention when I've been researching to do this episode, that towards the back end of the episode, and it's just while I remember, because obviously we'll get there, but the split screen, and I want to talk about what actually happens within that split screen when we do talk through it later. But it was kind of taken from Semisonic's closing time, right? And I didn't realize that, and I was actually I wouldn't say quite a big fan of Semisonic, but Secret Smile was their first big hit, and it's 1998. I would have been in, 1999. I would have just started work at that point, full-time work. And I do remember going to work and hearing quite a lot of garbage stuff, which will pick up on later in the season. Yeah. Because obviously garbage is within this season as well. And, Semisonic were a band that I was well known to me. I just didn't put the two together. And I've watched the video recently and I was like, oh, yeah, that I can totally see why you got that from. Right. Well, Chris Carter's always been a sponge, and he's able to pick up these things like great and small, like the people moving through the split screen to the other half of the screen in closing time. And then there's more evidence of this in this episode, like the Schindler's List moment, which I'm sure we'll get to. And he is a sponge, and he incorporates all of that into his story. Personally, okay, my thing with Chris Carter and his comedy episodes, I think he took a long time to find his comedic voice for the show, the right timbre for him. I think he was trying too hard to emulate what Darren Morgan and Vince Gilligan were doing earlier on. Like the syzygy stuff and that kind of thing. Yeah. And even for me, Postmodern Prometheus also, I think he's trying too hard. But here he finds it. And then a couple of episodes later with How the Ghost Stole Christmas, he builds on it. And I think he's finally found his comedic bottle voice, because he's always been able to do Mulder one-liners. But here is where he starts. Sixth season, he's putting it all together, and he's making really strong comedy episodes. For me, anyway. Yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from. I mean, it's not overt humor, is it? It's more free-flowing. And you're right with like How the Ghost Stole Christmas and this one as well. Some of the quips that Mulder has, and some of the quips that are against Mulder as well. And this will lead perfectly into the opening scenes. And I'm sure we'll find that out, and then we'll as we go through, I'm sure we'll pick up things as we go along that we may not have realised on the first or second or 50th watch. Until you literally have to analyse it, because I think you hit the nail on the head when it's like, this is an episode because my partner, she never is not a massive X-Files fan. She's aware of it. She watches episodes with me.
Mm-hmm.
She has seen Home, and she will never forgive me for showing her Home. so all I have to do is do Mrs. Peacock, and she's like that, or the host as well. I do the sucky noise on the host, and she hates me for that. But Triangle is a one that, you know, I can stick on any time, and she loves to watch, you know, and I love to watch it, and it's literally, you know, when you're doing the ironing, or you know, you're sitting down just chilling out and want to put something on, Triangle is a definite go-to for me for, you know, having background music on, really, and just being able to just flow with it and swim with it. So literally swing with it, thanks to Mark Snow. Literally swing with it. So without further ado, let's talk, I guess, go into more depth. All right. Of deep waters of Triangle. Jumping in the deep end. We are jumping in the deep end. Okay, so opening scene, there's not much to go on, but we will obviously talk about the name of the ship, the broken to pieces ship that he's currently on, which was the Lady Garland, which is obviously a reference to Wizard of Oz. And this is sprinkled right throughout the episode. There's lots of things, and I think we should bring that up now. I mean, which ones were you particularly fond of that they've used in this episode for those little nods to the Wizard of Oz? Okay, before I do that, let me just say that I've always thought that the lone gunmen are kind of our answer to, or Chris Carter's answer to, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. So right. we already had the Wizard of Oz built into our story, and they're, of course, in this episode. I guess I would say the Ballroom Band with the name of the singer is Elmira Gulch, who, of course, is Margaret Hamilton's character in The Wizard of Oz before she turns into the witch, the nasty bicycle lady. And so Elmira Gulch and the Lollipop Guild, which, of course, are the Munchkins. Yeah. I mean, I really like the deep dive. I like the Yip Harburg, the fact that, you know, that's a lyricist for the song. Yes. Which is the captain. I thought that was really nice. And obviously it's based in 1939. The film was released in 1939 as well. I'm sure there's other ones that and I think that the main obvious one, which we'll just talk about as just the Wizard of Oz element, is the end, right? Which is like almost scene for scene, pretty much exactly what happens at the end of Wizards for Oz, when, you know, it says there's no place like home, and various different things, even almost like the three of them when they do get to the bedside, and it's like you can totally tell they're the lone gunmen. So I did like those elements, and of course Skinner and his dog Toto. And Toto, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the singer. Now, I wanted to research this, or go back through my mind and remember where I saw this. I think it was Cathy G has got the one of the original scripts. And are you aware, or have I misremembered this, that the singer was meant to be Mimi Rogers? Oh, wow. Yeah. You know what? I'm not that's 100% something sure, but it sounds very familiar, but yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, which, you know, I won't go into too much detail because people are just going to start rolling their eyes. But yeah, any chance have Diana Fowley in, and I'll be happy. So, so there was that as well, which I wanted just to bring up. But so the credits roll, X-Files comes on. We get the German version of The Truth Is Out There at the end of the credits as well. So we get the change there. And then we come back to the scene on the boat, and the Germans lifting Mulder up. And this is the first kind of real aspect of, you know, this steady cam kind of footage that they use. Steady cams can only hold 4 minutes of film. So the edits would have had to have been quite, you know, really well planned in advance. And this is only just the beginning part of it. But one of the aspects I really like about this one is the kind of, we're going through the exposition piece of, you know, what year he's in. FBI don't exist. And the fact that they're saying, my name's not Jerry, which I think is really funny. And also, I don't know about you, but, and let me know about this, but every time they say, is that a name, Mulder? Right. I always think they're going to say Fox. I always think they're going to say Fox.
Is that a name Fox rather than is that a name Mulder? Oh.
Yeah, I always say it feels like a juxtaposition for me. It's like, is that a real name, Fox? And it's like, no, it's Mulder. So I think I always pick that up. So when we do get to the obviously Ypag Harburg's ship, and it gets taken down, there's obviously a few cuts in there. What do you make to the actual physicality of the edit and the cuts then? Because as much as it's groundbreaking and wonderful to see, it was 1998, so there was restrictions on what he could do, and then some of the cuts are a bit obvious if you're looking for them. They are quite easy to spot in some ways, but I don't think it takes any away from the enjoyment. But what did you make to the kind of the cut and the dark scenes that they use throughout the episode?
Well, particularly at the beginning, I love how it requires you to be very focused on what you're watching and like, what are we looking at? You're really brought into it because you're like trying to discern what you're seeing on the screen. And first of all, mad props to Steadicam operator Dave Luckenbach, who did most of the Steadicam, because that is amazing work.
Yeah.
I love like in Rope, where it is obvious in places where the cuts are, but it never takes away from it. You just kind of feel like you've accomplished something. Oh, I know where that cut is. I saw it.
Yeah.
It makes you feel smarter for noticing where the cut is. It's pretty smooth though. It's not jarring to me in the least.
That's interesting you'd say that, actually, because I don't think it's jarring either. But some of the not necessarily the critiques of it, but the fact that it is very kind of it's with the style of show and style of film or episode that it is that's almost makes it it's rewatchable for that point of view rather than anything that's happening within the story.
Mm-hmm.
And people would say that the critique is that you're looking for the technicalities of the episode, and people like the technicality of the episode more than the actual story itself. Would you balance that out? Do you think that is right, that potentially that some people might like it just purely for that reason? Because I'm one of those. I love technical stuff.
I can totally see watching it for that reason. Is that why Rope is such a classic, or is it the story? And I think it's both there, and I think it's both here. Well, in both cases, for me, it's both. It's like seeing this amazing presentation different from what we're used to, and at the same time progressing the story by using, because all of it is just moving our story forward. It's like none of it is done without reason. It all makes sense, and it all brings something to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to shout out to David Duchovny as well, because there's a lot of Chris Carter aspects to this episode, and something I only really picked up on when I was going through it today is when he's in the captain's yacht kind of thing. He has to say 2 degrees above the 30th parallel of the Saragossa Sea, just above the Tropic of Cancer, 64 degrees west by southwest of the Platinum Bank, 60 miles southwest above Bermuda.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're having to do that in that one take, and that's a lot to remember and a lot to phonetically take aboard. And we're going to talk about another kind of thing that is phonetic later on when we come across a particular character.
Right.
So yeah, there is, again, that's a technical aspect. The fact that they have to learn the parts, that they have to move in a particular way, that they have to probably rehearse this time and time again to be ready for the actual filming of it, and to try and have it perfect. And I think one of the days they said that, I think on day 8 they only had 2 bits of film that was available at the 10 they filmed, because there was it just wasn't usable, because some of the aspects, some of the scenes just didn't fall right, if maybe an extra didn't go in a particular way or things like that. But I do like the fact that there is that scene there where Duchovny has to rhyme that off. And then something that I find quite interesting in the next bit is the contemporary. There's 2 contemporary kind of mentioned within this, which obviously puts it in a very kind of Pacific time bottle. And that would be obviously the White House gag and the Spice Girls gag. So that's not something that we see in the X-Files a lot, really. But there's two elements in this one, which obviously dates it to particularly 1998, and he physically does say 1998 in the episode as well. So it is interesting. And is that kind of the sort of thing that you're talking about with Chris Carter and finding his way? Because it is a contemporary comment, really.
No, wasn't really what I was thinking of, but there's a definite, again, it does go back to what I was saying about Chris Carter, the sponge. Okay. So in 1998, he is soaking in news reports about what's going at the White House, and that filters.
Everyone was doing that.
Yeah. And that filters into his story because it just runs right through him. And the same thing from the Spice Girls. The Spice Girls were like everywhere then. Everybody knew the Spice Girls of the Spice Girls. Even if you weren't actively buying Spice Girls albums, you knew who the Spice Girls were. And again, it's just, he's a filter, everything that goes in comes out in the X-Files.
Yeah. And the thing about Spice Girls as well is that Wannabe is the beginning part is a one take scene in the video as well.
Oh yes.
So there's a nice little mirror into that as well. So there's that connection, which I think is purposely done.
Yep.
So that was nice to see that. We get the fighting of Spender, and then he realizes this is the first reveal of someone who's in the universe that is in 1939. It's almost incomprehensible. How do you think that plays out?
Again, it's you're really actively having to look at it to see what's going on until he says Spender. I'm not sure the first time I was watching it, I was entirely sure what was going on there, that it was Spender until he says Spender. And,
No,
now,
I definitely didn't.
Now, of course, I know.
Yeah.
But it's disorienting and it's fun, like, what's he doing there? That's when you knew it was going to be a great episode.
I wanted to pick out something that if we recorded this 8 to 10 months ago, I wouldn't have batted an eyelid with it. But obviously 1939, the war's coming, and over the radio we hear that of closing of places of entertainment, cinemas, theatres and other places of entertainment as well. And that had a bit of resonance with us recording here in a pandemic.
Oh,
the
yeah.
amount of the fact that it's saying about cinemas closing and theatres and places of entertainment not being able to do it, and it's kind of really kind of prescient to what we're in. But that's just a throwaway comment there. I do have one question for the next scene though, because obviously we move into the Jeepers Creepers and the band, like we've said. And I know you'll particularly like this question.
Okay.
Okay, so this question is, where's Krychek?
Oh my God, I know. Where is Krychek? I know, if we're talking about like Fally is supposed to be in there, and I could now the more I'm thinking about it, who would have been more perfect? I mean, even more perfect than Kirsch's assistant being on the stage would have been Fally. Where is Krychek? I need Krychek.
Yeah. And it dawned on me when we see Cigarette Smoking Man appear as well, and there's a henchman that's next to him. It's just like an extra. It's not anyone in particular, I don't think, anyway. And it was like, wouldn't it be great if that was just Krychek? Because it would make sense that he's around or in some way, a bit like what Skinner is. He's on the periphery of the Nazi side of things, but maybe like a go-between, or even the British guy, or when they're in the decks as well. That it could be, one of the spies kind of thing. That would have been quite nice to include him in.
It would have been perfect for him to be the spy guy who Mulder tells the information and then the information gets relayed. That sounds like a Krychek-y thing to do. So maybe Chris wanted Nick Lee for this and Nick just wasn't available because it seems perfect. Yeah,
I don't think it would have worked with him. I think what I would have liked to have maybe seen, there's a couple, well, this is us fan fiction, and I think a little bit,
yes.
Is potentially either Cigarette Smoking Man's henchman, which now thinking about it probably doesn't quite suit, being the English-German spy, when he goes to the door and he opens the door, that the person behind the door could have been Krychek. You know, when like he's telling what the Force hammer is, and instead of like not seeing the person, that you would have seen that person behind that door, and that would have been Krychek. That would have been nice, I think.
That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah. So we meet Cigarette Smoking Man in his Nazi uniform, and obviously Skinner as well. So this is a good time to talk about the Cigarette Smoking Man's German accent, because
oh God,
Mitch Pileggi actually could speak German,
right?
So Cigarette Smoking Man had to learn this phonetically. So it's very kind of like what's the way? He's definitely given it 110%.
Right.
But the fact that he had to do that was telling for the type of actor he is, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I really feel for Bill Davis there. I mean, everybody is always crawling all over him for how bad the accent was, pronunciation, and whatnot. I think it does two things. I think, first of all, that he did an amazing job having to fill that role within the environment of these long, long cuts and having to do this language that he is not familiar with. But here's something to think about. This is kind of Mulder's envisioning of things, right? And we'll get more into that later.
Yeah, in a minute.
in a minute. Okay, good. Maybe, the way Mulder thinks is so big and broad and not always 100% on target. So maybe the fact that Cigarette Smoking Man's accent isn't entirely right, that his words aren't entirely perfectly formed, it works for what's going on. That's my theory.
Okay. Yeah, so that minute has come. No. The reason why I've come to this point, we're going to go to the Scully and the FBI scene at this point, and I think it must have been during the X-Cast quarantine rewatch when they were asking for people for opinions, and in our X-Cast group, video chat group that we have backstage, a discussion came about, and it became apparent to me that I was an outlier in my understanding of this episode. And I know that we've talked off air a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months back about this, and said, because we knew we were recording this one, and their perception, and it'd be interesting to see what other people's perception of the Scully and the FBI scene is, that all happened. In my eyes, that didn't happen. It's still part of Mulder's dream, and we'll get into that as we come into the episode. But there's multiple ways of taking this episode. I've also heard that people think that that Mulder went back in time properly and actually did go back in time. It was kind of some weird, quantum mechanical thing. This is why the characters were there. And there's some people that obviously think that the Scully thing wasn't real, and it was a dream. It was part of Mulder's dream. So I've already kind of alluded to the fact that I think you are on my side of the fence with the fact that Scully is not actually Scully. It's Mulder's version of Scully. But what do you make to the multiple takes that people have kind of come across? And it's really interesting to see how different people have taken it different ways.
I really love, first of all, that everybody is seeing it in some different way, that we're not all seeing it the same, which again is more of the beauty of this episode. I think there's no doubt that this is in Mulder's head. Scully is running around the FBI. She is threatening people. She is kissing her boss. She is doing things that Dana Scully would not ordinarily do. She's doing this very fancified Mulder idealistic version of what he thinks Dana Scully is doing at the FBI. Plus, the lone gunman just waltzing on it. Are they just allowed to waltz right into the FBI offices?
Yeah. And to me, it sounds like it's got, because I was going to talk about this, but it's perfect time, that the lone gunman's cadence is very Mulder cadence, and it almost feels like it's a Mulder talking to Scully with the projector on. It feels like that to me. It feels like it's Mulder telling us stuff.
Right, and it goes back to what you were just saying before about David having to do the scene of where he is in the Bermuda Triangle. They have to deliver this very heavy dialogues, very specific with swath imaging, and it does sound a lot like the way Mulder would speak.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also, as well, as I say, that swath, the imaging, which is basically just a piece of paper with some numbers on it. So it's just an excuse to have Scully run around the FBI. But I do agree, and I do accept that this is probably the best part of the episode. I think it's the best filmed. But there's also, I've seen, obviously, there's been reviews of this episode over multiple frames and whatever. But one particular one, unfortunately, I'm sorry for the person who wrote this, but I can't remember exactly where this was now. But was saying that I think that the Scully scenes work. It's because you're in a building that you're used to seeing week in, week out. Or at least, within a couple of episodes, you're going to see the FBI building, whereas the ship is something that we'll see as a one-off. And the fact that you're seeing her going round the FBI building has that kind of familiarity with you, and you feel at home in there. Mm-hmm. And I do think that is probably one of the reasons why I feel it's the better part. It's the better part of the episode from a technical standpoint, but also kind of the way that she's running around.
Well, I think first of all, it's able to be better lit, and that's by design. It's by design that the ship is dark and the FBI office is filled with light. And she's running around these offices that we know, running into people that we know. There's a lot of validity in that, I think. You know what's really interesting that struck me? This is the third episode in season 6. They've just moved from Vancouver to Los Angeles, pretty much. And early in the tenure with all these new people that they have on the crew, Chris Carter throws this at him. It's like, it's an indoctrination. Like, what can you do here? You're going to be moving sets around. Jillian's going to be in the elevator. You're going to be changing props and moving furniture. I mean, he really indoctrinated them quickly with this episode.
Yeah, it's like a rite of passage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome to the X-Files. This is what we do. And I do like that. There's a couple of things in the lift or elevator, depending on how you want to phrase it. But I just wanted to talk about Skinner in this scene as well, because obviously she goes to see Skinner. And there was another debate that we've had recently on the video chats that I am on. And it was about the fact that the way that Skinner's acting. Now, it's similar to what you were saying about the fact that we're seeing it through the lens of Mulder. But there's also this background kind of information of, he's saying his hands are tied. He is saying that he can't do it. He's not the direct superior anymore. So and we're early, as you say, we're early in season 6. So it's like reinforcing that Skinner isn't your boss anymore, and it's doing that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's doing a couple of bits here. But it's also the fact that, she's going in blasé about that, and having no conception of the fact it's, it might be bugged, the area might be bugged, and that Skinner's trying to go, not in here kind of thing. And I can see that being through the Mulder prism that, that's what she thinks Scully's going to go to Skinner, because that's the way that he's thinking. And that the Mulder paranoia side of things with Skinner is right, because you don't know what mindset that the syndicate are in and what they could be doing around that within his office. Mm-hmm. And so then obviously she's wandering around the various different areas, and she needs the information that she's needing from the Office of Naval Intelligence, she says. And there's the two bits with the save your own ass kind of thing. So again, this is what makes me think. Well, it doesn't make me think, because I just automatically thought this anyway. But looking back on it, the fact that Cigarette Smoking Man is in Kirsch's office is obviously we've already seen that with Skinner, mm-hmm. and it's quite reasonable to think about it. But it's quite early on for that kind of reveal, and I think again that plays to the whole dream logic of Mulder thinking about Kirsch being the bad guy. He's the one that's in charge of them now, and that's obviously Smoking Man's going to be there,
right?
So yeah, and it happens again as well, doesn't it? It happens later on when Scully comes out the elevator, that you've got Kirsch, Spender, and Cigarette Smoking Man all together, and I just don't accept that would be happening in a hallway. I don't know what you think about that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of sense from that. Again, I just really think of it as Mulder's perceived imagination, waterlogged imagination, and this is what he thinks these people would be doing. I mean, the way that Scully talks to Skinner is not the way that Deana talks to her boss, and she doesn't, even though she might want something from Spender, she doesn't go up to him and tell him she's going to kill him if he doesn't do what she wants.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then she puts the fist up like she does in the triangle bit.
Right.
It's like, so God, I'll kill you kind of thing, and it just looks false. But I think it's designed to look that way.
Right.
Also, as well. Now, this is not part of the intention. I know this for, well, not for a fact, but I know, because there won't be of being this clever at this point, I don't think. But you've got cigarette smoking man phoning downstairs to the basement, asking about Scully handing that piece of paper over, and he asks for Spender. Now, what we later learn, you would think that he would be a bit more informal with what he thinks is Foley because of their connection together. It's not. So, and I know that wasn't intentional, but I think that works quite well. And it reinforces my argument that this was a dream, because it's what Mulder doesn't know that.
Yep, it does. It does. It backs that up.
It backs that up. And I don't care what anyone says. Well, they didn't write that yet. I don't care. That's the way I'm going. It's got Foley mentioned, so we're all right. Yeah. So that, as I say, that whole bit with Spender and Scully, it's kind of acted in a way for me where, as you say, it's enforcing that idea. And I want to ask you opinion on this, because this is something that I've kind of formulated in my head over the last couple of watches, that when you've got Scully going up and down in the lift, and as you say, some of the scene where the woman goes ow, and it's obviously for a swipe cut, and then you've got them moving the furniture around so they can get it perfectly timed, so when she comes back out, she's on a different level, but they've just removed the furniture, which I think is an amazing job, as you say, for the crew to do that. But then you've got the phone call. What do you make of the phone call in the lift? Have you thought about the phone call in the lift before?
I think I haven't really thought about the phone call since the very first time that I watched that episode, and at the time you're like, what? It's like, It doesn't quite make sense, and now it fits it. I guess there were no caller ID at that time.
No, there wouldn't be, no.
But it's a very convenient way to get that job done, but it gets the job done.
Okay, so I'm going to proposition something here that, what generally happens in dreams when you're sleeping is that outside influences affect dream. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking that may be a radio call or something actually on the ship that Mulder's actually floating around nearby.
Wow.
Of the rescue people coming.
Yes. Okay. So,
that's all I'm saying.
Oh, wow.
because she's on the phone. She's trying to answer that phone, and there's no reason or logic to what happens, because she opened the lift opens, and Skinner goes, "Is that you?" And it was like, "No, is that you?" And it's not them, and it's not. So who else is it going to be? Apart from potentially the lone gunman, which is obviously an option, but I personally think that you could take that as that's an outside influence. That's my supposition for that one.
Okay,
if you so will. Are we happy with that one? Would you take that on board?
I like how fan fictiony you're getting today. You are really seeing things in what's going on, and I like it.
Yeah, I think. I think it's probably because I got told this was not a dream, and I was like, "It is. I'm going to prove it.
I am going to analyze every single 5-second moment."
Oh, it's brilliant. It does. The only thing this throws me out a little bit, and it's only a small thing, and it's the nature of the way they've recorded it. Is that when Skinner comes out, I actually adore what Skinner does there. I think that's just brilliant acting, and I just love the way he switches mode. That he gets the kiss. I think we've got to mention the kiss.
Oh, God.
And we'll mention that in a second. But the way that he leaves the lift and sees the three of them there, and then instantly does his what he does on the ship on the Queen Anne anyway, is that he's trying to balance between the two worlds, and he quickly spins round and talks to Scully in a way of like, this is, you're not to come here, you're not meant to be coming to me, but et cetera, et cetera. And I like that. I thought that was a particularly good part of the episode.
Yeah, that he really, again, spitting out some dialogue there. He really wrapped up, tossed out. He delivers that with such great. But back to the kiss here, okay?
Yes.
Let's talk about, we're watching Dana run around the FBI, and she's doing things that Mulder would expect her to do, whether or not you believe it's a dream. That's what Mulder would think she was doing. What you don't expect is for her to plant one on Skinner. You might accept all this other stuff as things she's doing, whether, in reality or in the dream. Either way, you're accepting all of that. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, she grabs him and kisses him. It's like a moment you just go,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for all those people that ship Skinner and Scully, then, I think it works. And I know that Darren Mooney is like in his reviews. I don't know if you've read his reviews, but he's very much used the term and ship throughout the actual episode, because you've got the Scully and the Skinner ships. You've got the actual ship, which we'll talk about right at the very end of the episode, and you've got an actual ship.
right.
So it's nice. It's a nice continuity. And I think what he also mentioned as well is that's a triangle in itself. So the fact that it's like almost thematically working in that regard, which is really astute of Darren, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. But it is a nice little triangle of thing. It's not something that's really played out as such, but there is always that Scully and Skinner element that people like to use. And obviously, it's shout out to Sarah, because I'm sure she'll be waiting for us to talk about that kiss. So there you go, Sarah. That's all you're going to get, though.
Well, it's one of my favorite moments in the episode, and it's because it was so totally unexpected.
Yeah, and it works. And I like, again, what you were saying before about the fact that Mitch Pileggi has to play that so well, because he has to go from one thing to another. He has to go from that shock to look like the way he's actually looking at. Sorry, I heard myself there for a second. So it was the way that he's had to react to the kiss. He finishes that. He's kind of looking sheepish and awkward, opens the door, then has to do the other emotional thing of, oh crap, I've got to change this now. And I think it's a testament to that scene, because I think that's particularly a part of the scene, I think, is the part of the best in the episode.
Yeah.
We're going back to the ballroom. And we've got Spender translating for Cigarette Smoking Man here, which is unfortunate for Cigarette Smoking Man. So we've got Spender there, and we've got Scully, and it's obviously we get to the point where Scully is about to be shot, and that's when he has to protect her. He actually stops it at that point. What do you make to this bit? Because there's the killings that happen. There's the impossible position that Mulder's in.
Mm-hmm.
From a storytelling point of view, what do you make to this bit? Because it's it's a really delicate situation that he's in here.
Right. Well, it's again, it goes back to proving our dream theory where Mulder wants to be Scully's hero, and he gets to be Scully's hero. But can I just take 1 second to laud Chris Owens here? Because Jeffrey Spender, he's been a character with very little redeeming value to the series to this point, and he's been written as this obnoxious simp. There's something about the way that Owens comes off in the confines of this episode as both variations of Jeffrey that I really appreciate. This is, for me, the best Chris Owens episode. I think he just nails it. I'm just really enjoying having him, and that's why I wouldn't want Krycek in the part that he's playing on the ship. I wanted Krycek as that backstabbing guy. So I wouldn't want him here, because I think Chris Owens is doing a great job in this episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the there's elements when he's first introduced, and I think I talked about this with Darren back in the day, where you do feel that his introduction and Mulder's empathy for him at some points, and the fact that he's kind of got it the wrong way around, and it's actually, it's Scully the one that he's needing to really be mad at, because Mulder's actually trying his best to actually help him at points and be empathetic towards him, and that's a Mulder trait. And I do like that. And then, but as you say, when he becomes the spoiled little bratty type, it's fine. I don't have a major problem with it. But you're right. I think this stretches him. And obviously, he's appeared in many other variations of Chris Owen, the actor,
right,
in various different episodes, hasn't he? But as Spender,
yeah, I think. Yeah. Well, I think Spender could have been a better antagonist to the proceedings than he ever was, and I think it's one of the reasons why he kind of goes off the canvas later in the season, but don't want to do that right now. So
no, I would agree. I think with a bit more better writing, more drafting on him, I think he could have been a more substantial character than what he actually turns out to be. And 2001's Son, for example, which I know it's later in the season, is kind of like sort of would have nice to have seen more of him before that all that kind of kicks off, really.
Yeah, because he's interesting here, and he is somebody I would be willing to have. Up till now, it's been like, come on, we're all in Mulder's corner, and no one is in your corner. We want our antagonists, like Cigarette Smoking Man, like Krychek, to pull us a little, so they're worthy of battling our heroes.
Yeah, and as you say, it just doesn't quite come across that way. Also, within this, there's a couple of things here that I wanted to bring up. You mentioned Fight the Future earlier, and what I find intercut with this is when Scully's looking up with the lone gunman at the ship, and the three. I told you with this analyst thing, I quite like it. The lone gunmen are looking up at the ship, and then she says, "I don't believe it," and then the lone gunman says, "Seeing is believing." Mm-hmm. And if that's not a homage to the fact that there was a massive Antarctic UFO that flew off and she didn't see it, or did she see it? Because there's a huge debate about that as well now.
Yeah.
Because obviously in the captions it says, some people say it says,
well,
"I see it."
It does say that. I think I started that debate. I think I was the first person to see it.
So there's an interesting thing. I cannot hear it. I had it on my 60-inch TV a few months ago, or a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months ago, and no matter how hard I try, I can't hear her say it. But that's a different story and a different debate. A different debate,
right? Seeing is believing.
But seeing is believing, and I do like that, and I think again going back to that whole Mulder dream aspect, that she's saying I don't believe it, and saying seeing is believing, as in like you've seen the ship in the UFO. Now you're seeing this. Seeing is believing. You believe it. This is what you need to do now, kind of thing. Which I think is a nice little nod. So the games, or the wordplay, the children like kind of mythos wordplay that Mulder uses, James Brown, or Knock You Down, and Put in Tame. Is that something that it's not Put in Tame? Isn't something that I've ever come across? Now in my research, I can find it's. The John Brown thing was from New Jersey, but I'm not too au fait with all that. Did you have any wordplay games like that when you were younger, or do you know any further background information to the actual stories themselves?
Well, I was pretty familiar with the John Brown. That one was kind of a common one. We didn't use Put in Tame much. And now I can't. Now I've drawn a mental block on other ones. I feel like there's another one out there. Let's just continue on, and maybe I will think of what it is.
Probably. Yeah. So after and as I say, we talked about the fact that he saves Scully at that point, and the scientist is, he's saying that's the scientist, and all that kind of thing. And then we get the point where they're actually on the knees, ready to be assassinated, and then the fight scene kicks up. Now, then when they're escaping, we've got Skinner coming out and saying "God bless America," and we've got, as you mentioned, the swing music. So I love this part. I mean, when we answered the call before, when we're just about to set up here, I was still whistling and humming the tune when I came on, and you pulled me up on it because I didn't realize I was doing it. But yeah, but I think it's a wonderful thing to have this swing, lively, dancey, entertaining, smiley, happy tune, and then have the scene that you're actually seeing, which is the fight scene. I think it's played wonderfully.
Right. It's driving us into it, and you do. It's happy music. It's uplifting music, and then get heavy.
Yeah, and then it obviously goes into like sort of the drum beaty stuff and all that. I just absolutely, I just adore it, and it's just marvelous. And I actually have the song on my playlist as well, so I do have to often play that song. And so he also gets taken away. So Scully gets taken away by Mulder, saying you're the only one that can save this ship. And if you're a shipper out there, then what's coming up next is definitely something about a ship. So when they're on the actual ship itself, and he goes out and he gives the explanation about what is and how she can save it by turning it back and going back to the Devil's Triangle, and we get the inevitable kiss here. Do you remember? He said it in the actual press release and stuff like that over there. It wasn't obviously broadcast that way,
right?
As in something that would be a surprise to you. Was it a surprise to you? And what do you make of the actual scene itself?
Oh, wow. I don't really remember if it was a surprise to me. I assume that it was. I think it is the perfect way to deal with this, because you're giving the shippers what they want, and you're not really offending the no-romos. For all the people who, like we said, were disappointed by Fight the Future, here it is, not too long after Fight the Future. Do you think that would have played into his mind then? Do you think that was something he purposely thought? Yeah. Well, this is a way to actually do it. I do think he was considering that, and also needing to get it out of the way. I don't know how many people watched Moonlighting, but there was sort of a similar dynamic going on where the whole world wanted Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd's characters to kiss Dave and Maddie. But once you do that, then it's done, and then you don't have the build up to that. And so they also did that in this sort of way. They went into a flashback episode, and that's when they kissed. And when you handle it that way, you're making a lot of people happy at the same time. I think it really worked. Personally, I also think it's the best kiss that they have during the entire run of the whole series.
I do. As a no Romo, and I'm going to mention something towards the end of this episode in a second as well. But as a no Romo, I think it's the best kiss that they've done. So I'm in agreement with you with that. It's
perfectly timed. It's like in the heat of this adventure, they've been running down the hallways hand in hand. I mean, who doesn't love that? And Chris Carter just nailed it. This is when he needed to do it, because it didn't happen in the movie. He got it done. He got it done perfectly in a way that doesn't affect either side of his. Well, there's always somebody who isn't going to like it, but he satisfies the majority of both sides of the fan base. Yeah, definitely. And then obviously Mulder goes off and jumps off the ship, and and then we enter back into the world of the living. I do like the comment says I was expecting a left. Yes. I always love that. I think I actually used to use that phrase, a bit of time. I was expecting a left. I think can we go back to one thing though, like when the Scullys cross each other in the hallway?
Yes, sorry, that was something I was meaning to go into, and I know we talked about the split screen, but we didn't. I crossed over it, so yeah, I apologise for that. Yes, go ahead. Okay, just that. Again, it's something unexpected. There are things that you were expecting to happen in this episode, and like
ways you think the adventure is going to play out. Like Mulder is going to do this, and he's going to fight these Nazis who kind of seemed like Indiana Jones-esque Nazis rather than, Schindler's List-esque Nazis, if that makes sense. Anyway, but what you don't expect is to have this split screen in which the characters cross each other and they have this sense of each other, which Gillian does perfectly on both sides of the frame.
She does. And do you want to hear my second reinforcement of the dreams?
I do.
Okay, so I think this is me as we go through it. I think that because Scully is looking for Mulder at this point, that this is the moment where Scully finds him.
Oh.
In the real world, that Scully finds him at this point, and that's why the 1939 Scully recognizes that there's something not quite right there because of the crossover of the two. So it's Mulder's brain kicking in because it's like, oh, hang on, there's two of them, because he's seen it within his dream. He's seen Scully, but also the fact that that there's like an outside influence having an effect on it as well.
Wow. Yeah,
I thought about this, Paige.
I like your mindset today.
It's either I've been watching too much David Lynch, or it's or I'm just adamant this is going to be a dream. So when we do get to the end, I like the little comment of Gilligan's. Gilligan's awake, which I thought was amazing. And as I mentioned, it is literally. I know it's different, but it's played out like the end of The Wizard of Oz, and this is the shocker. This is my best shipper moment. This is when I become a shipper. For one brief moment. I absolutely love when Mulder says "I love you" to Scully. I think it's just the culmination of everything that's happened over the course of the 6 years, the film here, right where we are now. He's coming to terms with his feelings at this point, and he's built up the courage to actually physically tell her that. But it's the fact it's kind of not given back. And it's not. It's just not. It's not there for Scully, because she thinks he's still delirious. But the fact that he means it so much, and it has an effect from a point of view of me, from seeing it through Mulder's eyes, it's like that is the absolute perfect time for that to happen, and it gets me every time. I love it. I absolutely love that scene, and I think that the way I would say that I'm not a shipper. And, a lot of people say they're like an agnostic. I just don't want. I'm quite happy to accept where they are. I'm not a big fan of it being on screen.
Absolutely.
So that's where I kind of stand with it. So, but something like that is earned, it's felt, and it's perfect. And you like you say with the kiss, that's the best kiss in my eyes. I think the whole episode is like almost like Mulder coming to terms with where he is after what's happened with the film and after what's happened during the course of the last 6 years. And I think that just is the perfect end point of that journey.
Right. Well, I think it's a fabulous line too, but I think it's then topped by Scully saying, "Oh, brother," because you have all this emotion welling up, and then, "Oh, brother," just the throwaway line. But I want to back up your dream analysis here.
I know what you're going to say, because we've had discussions about this as well. But yeah, go on, carry on.
There is a very simple way of resolving if this is a dream or not, and it's right in the script. Scully says the Queen Anne was nothing more than a ghost ship. That means she wasn't on it. She wasn't wandering down corridors and through the ballroom with a lone gunman. It was all in his mind, his very vivid, very entertaining mind.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I had the exact same argument, and the argument that came back to me was that it could be a ghost ship, as in like there was nobody on the ship when she was on it.
Oh my God. That's
the argument against it. So it didn't fall as the way I thought it would, because that was my whole argument. Because before analysing it or even talking about it with fellow X-Files people, this conversation never came up. I've never had this conversation with anyone, and it was like, right, okay. And when they started to say the Scully thing was real, I was like, no, it's not, because she says it's a ghost ship at the end.
Right.
And they were like, well, no, because the ghost ship is like the fact that she's gone onto this ship and there's nobody on it, and it's dead, and it's it's dilapidated and all that kind of thing, and it's just a ghost ship.
That's not what ghost ship means. When she says it's a ghost ship, it means there wasn't a ship there. She says, like, the boat you were on exploded. Like, you were in the water. There's no ship involved. No, I totally understand, because I can see why somebody would say it that way. But all these things that she's saying when she sees him in the hospital is disproving the theory. But I can see taking that way. There are many things in the course of this series where people are taking it one way and I'm taking it the other. So
exactly.
That's the beauty of it.
Well, as I say, I mean, the shocking thing for me was when I was contacting you about doing this episode, and I said, how do you view this episode as in Scully's particular? And you went, well, it's all a dream. And I was like, oh, there's somebody that actually, it's the same as me. I like it. Let's talk about that. And hopefully, we've done it well.
Wait, I just want to throw back at you what I call my rewatch blog for this episode. I call it Musings of a Soggy FBI Agent, because I want to, throw it back to Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. So Musings of a Soggy FBI Agent, meaning it's a dream.
Okay. I am wholeheartedly behind you on that statement. But we do need to see what other people think of the episode as well. So we'll do that now. So let's have a look on the mailbag. So put a call out on Twitter and Facebook, and we should go and have a look at that now and give them a quick read.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in the mailbag now. So thank you everyone as always for joining the conversation, and on the Facebook group first before we move to Twitter. So we've got Adam Silva. He says that, man, I love this one. Exciting energy throughout. Brilliant direction. Great dual performances from the cast. Driving music, etc. And it's one of the last real classics to me. Would you consider it a last real classic? Is anything beyond this that you would say would be more of a classic?
Well, I have a real affinity for a couple of the season 9 episodes, and I do like the resolution of the Samantha arc, but this is sort of like, this is a mammoth moment. It was for Chris Carter, and it is for the series, and I can totally buy this viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I think it was on Darren's blog, was that Chris Carter didn't get an Emmy for this, and one of the arguments is that the X-Files zeitgeist at this point was probably it was still high, it was still big, it was still massive. The film had just come out, but it was on the wane, and probably the reason why it got a nomination for sound editing, I think, but not for direction. And I think that's probably, I don't know what was around it and what won that year, but it feels like it's probably right in his assertion that it wasn't, X-Files was kind of like, it's on its 6th year, it's on its way down now, and the people like voting for it just wasn't quite there for him. And I think that's a real shame, because I think this is just an outstanding piece of work from him.
I definitely agree. I think the show got jobbed.
Yeah, it did. Cy James says, I absolutely adore this episode. It is bonkers throughout, with regular cast members in different roles. The whole cast are wonderful. The music and dialogue is excellent. The end scene being reminiscent of The Wizard of Oz is genius. Marvellous. So that's something that we've already talked about. Christian Ponce, I learned to appreciate this episode. When I was a boy, I hated it. The second act, Scully at the FBI, seems to me a total and absolute work of art. So I think, again, goes to testament that Scully FBI scene seemed to be the one. We didn't mention the slip, actually.
Right.
When she comes out the FBI agent, doesn't she? She comes out the X-Files basement, and she slips a little bit. And the fact that it is like a one-track shot, I actually like it still in. I like the fact they kept that in.
I do too.
Sue Strauss simply says, love it. Michael Little simply says, great spectacle, love it. Natalie Tiss says, for the 5 questions of our X, my favourite scene is when Scully's running up and down the office, begging, kissing and barking orders. Gillian has a great energy here. Scully must be really annoyed with his Mulder ditch. He probably has no idea how worried she was. Well, Natalie, I'm sorry to say, it was a dream.
but it is true. Jillian has so much energy in this that she is just, oh God, it makes you happy to be alive. I mean, don't you feel like you're sort of running around with her up until I love it and how it. Until she gets into the lone gunman's car and there's Spender running behind. I mean, it's all so perfectly put together. And then we can all take a breath at the commercial, or what used to be the commercial.
And then talking about Lovett, Andrew Levitt. Sorry, Andrew Levitt. Says that's easily my favourite part of the episode too. I apologise for the horrible play on your word. On your name. And then he actually has his own comment and says, an episode that is more spectacle than substance. It is a fun jaunt as Mulder finds himself in the past and has to escape various dangerous situations, while in the present, Scully has to avoid being caught by Kirsch and Spender so she can find him. Carter's one-take direction is disorientating, reflecting Mulder's bewilderment, despite his elation at being where he wants to be. Finding the show's main cast in the past in various roles is entertaining and an enjoyable, if ultimately empty episode. There's a couple of things actually with that. Something I've not really thought about, but Mulder does get where he wants to be, even though actually from us, we're not saying that he actually does. But I never thought of it that way. They actually, he's in search for the Queen and he actually does find it. And I never really thought of it that way, really. I don't know about you.
I don't think he found it.
Well, no, but what I mean, in his mind he has though, hasn't he?
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you know what I mean? So the way that he has actually found the thing he was looking for, even though it is a fever dream. But it is interesting that's what, and when he said this is the bit where he says, "Oh, this is unbelievable," the fact that he's so happy at finding the very thing he was looking for,
right?
It's not something that I've really kind of reflected on that much.
That was just him getting hit on the head with a piece of ship.
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to the punch, because I know that will get brought up. That when he wakes up and he feels his face and he feels like the side of his thing, it's exactly that in my eyes. It's something that is being hit by a piece of wrecked ship or something like that.
Right.
Or during natural crash or whatever. So that's the way I would work around that as well.
All right. Well, let me just tell you, though, that I was listening to the Chris Carter commentary on this episode in preparation for the podcast. And he plays it very straight. He says, and Mulder feels his eye, proof that it all happened. I think that the whole thing falls apart if the whole thing happened, because that's what, this would be wrong and this would be wrong and this would be wrong. But he played the commentary totally straight. So everybody who says it's not a dream, you can feel validated on the basis of what the writer-director said. But the way the script is built and the way it plays out backs up what me and Kurt are saying.
Well, the context is for kings at the end of the day. It all really happened in Mulder's head. It's just the way you read it. That's how you read the comment. I have to go back to listen to the comment actually. But if he says that it all really happened, well, okay.
In his in his head.
Anyway, but yes, so I've got Chandru on the next one as well. So he says Chandru Ravindran says the most superfluous piece of extraneous, unnecessary, and pretentious fluff. And I freaking love it to bits. It's one of them. I love that. I love the fact he's built it up to being like he hated it and he absolutely loves it. It's one of the most purely fun episodes of the X-Files. Everyone seems to be having a great time. The score is great. The direction is obviously great. And even though everything is kind of silly, there's a propulsive push to everything, which makes it more intense than it has any right to be. Sure, it feels kind of negligent to not have Krychek in this episode. Hey, thank you, Chandru. Yeah, you're with us in this episode, but that's a minor complaint. So how do I feel when watching Triangle? I definitely don't have a frown. Ask me again, I'll knock you down.
Wow. Nice.
He also says, awful line in a great episode, and even more awful way to finish up my thoughts. Oh, thank you very much for those people on Facebook. We'll just head on over to Twitter now. Okay, yeah, so on Twitter, Jeremy comes on and says, so that's Jeremy Royer 444. I came to the X-Files for its proposed truth regarding extraterrestrial interaction with the human race and the possible geopolitical realities surrounding this paradigm-shifting revelation. Scans checklist for Scully and Mulder punching Nazis to swing music. Nope. So he's not a fan. He's not a fan.
Yep. I think it's valid. It speaks to what some fans really were feeling at this time. It wasn't what they signed up for. And even though Triangle is one of the more highly rated episodes, these ratings, they were like starting to drop. And I think it might have had a lot to do with the airiness of this kind of episode. And while I personally love the swing music and it's my second favorite Mark Snow score, I can see why some of the fan base were going the other way. This is not about conspiracy and aliens and, things with chips and necks and whatnot. This is totally different. And either you were able to come along on how it was progressing or you weren't. And I understand that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, what Jeremy says there, every single word I actually agree with. I came to the X-Files for regarding extraterrestrial interactions, human race, the geopolitical realities. I came for, the conflict of truth and what's been hidden and all that. I absolutely adore the mythology. And it takes a long time for me to get to a point where it jumped the shark for me. And the jump the shark moment, I think some people will remember for this, from my point of view, is the spinning vertebrae. That's
yeah.
That I could take a lot. I even took Mulder's death, and that was difficult. But it was like that point was like, no, it's gone too far. I don't like that. I actually love the episodes, but that bit is like that is where I clock out. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. But I'm along for the ride. I actually enjoy the majority of the show, and if they want to give me a ranking, if they want to give me a triangle, I'm more than happy to take it. If they want to give me a Two Fathers One Son, absolutely, I'm all on board for that. So absolutely valid point. You're right, Paige. It's everyone comes to it in different ways, and as I say, season 6 onwards, really. I mean, I think there is a debate to have about pre-Vancouver being whether or not people did start to check out, and it goes to that point of the Emmy as well. In some ways, I think that you will lose viewers along the way, because after this one, you've got Dreamland. So again, another one which has that dream logic, that kind of flaky, loose, light feeling to it, and it will unfortunately lose people. I actually think it's a great run of the season, and season 6 is actually one of my favourite seasons in a lot of ways.
Yep.
But there is people who aren't there for that, and it's perfectly valid to say that. Right, Oscar Groucho. He comes on and says the elasticity of the format was being tested, taken in context of the contemporaneous success of Buffy, season 6 run of dramedy, shouldn't be a surprise. Triangle succeeds because it blends Hitchcockian rope tropes with rope tropes with genuine character development. I don't believe I managed to get contemporaneous success of Buffy and couldn't say Hitchcockian. Never mind. Tropes with genuine character development. A new beginning indeed. So, what do you think to that? The fact that you're looking at the TV landscape at that point then? What?
Still laughing. Landscape. I think it really was still able to, this is a formula in which you're able to go in many directions. It just seems like we're going in a certain direction all at once. And it takes away from some of the, we lose a lot of the Vancouver flavor here in LA. And if that was your primary love for the show came from that, then I can really see it weighing heavily on you. I think the formula can go in so many different ways, not just with the drama and comedy, but also with the people involved, as long as they aren't carbon copy agents of people we've had before. I don't know where that comes from, but But I totally understand it.
Like a Kid in a Candy Store has been on, and I love Triangle, XF Triangle, hashtag X-Files Triangle. Blending time, space, and realities. That's my kind of show. I'm highly entertained, and the first time I watch it, it kept me totally engrossed. And then Wendy D has said, possibly my favourite episode. I was in college, and I added and had added film studies as a major, and I was completely geeking out that the show had been in 16:9 with all the cross-cutting. Student me thought it was so clever. I still do. And that was it. That's the final comment. Have you got any final thoughts then, Paige, before we call it a day?
Just that it's really interesting that a lot of this episode was filmed in the same place that Titanic was, and in the tank, and with costumes, and that was such a big film that also we're getting the flavor from that. You know, we get flavor for this episode from a lot of different places. We get it from the Steadicam, and we get it from the setting and the music and the costumes and the writing. And that's why I think it works. It's just this great package that when you put it all together, this is one of the times when it really, really worked.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. It's a wonderful episode. I'm so glad that I was able to talk about it and give my opinions on stuff. I think it would have been a completely different episode had I not had previous discussions on it. and also, obviously, it's been a pleasure to speak to you again, Paige, on a glorious episode. So, if people are wanting some more from you, you mentioned your blog earlier on. You mentioned your Siblings to Cinema stuff,
right?
Your rewatch program. So, where can people find that, and what are you up to right at this moment in time?
Okay, well, our rewatch blog, Sibling Cinema, is on Blogger. We are in season 8, so we've gotten pretty far. It's taken us a few years. We can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Pinterest. And I'm also on Twitter as X-Pay, P-A-I.
Excellent stuff. And you can find me on the sister show, The Time Is Now. And you can find that on Twitter at The Time Is Now Pod, and that's the show Millennium. Obviously, we've got the episode Millennium coming next season. So that'll be interesting to see the two worlds collide at that point.
Yeah.
You can also find me on the Shipwrecked and Comatose a podcast, which is a Red Dwarf podcast, and you can find that at Red Dwarf Pod. And also, whenever Sir Patrick Stewart starts to get back involved in Star Trek Picard, we'll be looking at Make It So, which is obviously a Star Trek Picard podcast. So I'm on that with Luke Winch now. I was with Tony before that, and Luke has come onto the show. So we are currently at the moment, at time of recording, going through season 1 of Discovery, awaiting season 3. So season 3 will be out now. But we are Starfleet are looking after the show from there. But we'll be back in the new year for that with episodes covering Star Trek Picard and looking at various aspects of the show. So those are the best places to find me. And obviously, if you want to find me personally, to have it all amalgamated together, the best place to find me is on Twitter, which is at @rmuldrake. That's RMULDRAKE. So thank you, Paige, again. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Great show, as usual. And to quote the deep bowels of the ship, it's time for us to part. So until next time, trust no one, man.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Cerebral Jukebox.
Yeah, because we were talking about this. We've talked about the different covers there are. Now, you yourself, I thought I'd found a nice little sort of hidden gem here, because you yourself were in a band called Bleeder, or still are in a band called Bleeder.
Yeah.
And when I was looking on Spotify just for different covers of the song, I noticed there is a cover of this by a band called Bleeder. And I was like, oh, brilliant. This is what Niall's not told me, is that he's actually done a cover of it that got released.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
Maybe I'm not coming at it from an educated point of view, because, not only am I a man, I'm gay. I don't deal with pregnancy.
Are you?
And
have you ever told us that before?
I was trying to make a serious point.
Hey, we love you, you know that.
Yeah, but yeah, you have got a good point, Colin. This is a bit of a sausage fest episode. Maybe we should have got a lady involved.
Real Asian Podcast.
So I really do feel that there's this, and whether it's an invisible weight on our shoulders to be able to be like this ideal child, or like, just being able to not drag the family name down for whatever reason, even if it's self-imposed,
even if it's just completely made up in your mind.
Right, like Brian, you were just saying about your friend who said they felt like they couldn't come out to you.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.